Okay, welcome everyone. I guess we should get started here. It's 1 minute, so I don't see anyone else trickling in here. My name is Robert Carman. I'm a program manager on the application model team in the operating system group. And my area of PMing is navigation models, so the navigation area. Now, before I start, I've been asked to give a little bit of an announcement. So the grand prize drawing, if you're into the coding challenge, it has been moved from 6 p.m. to 6:30. And that's basically because it was in the middle of talks, so they didn't want everyone to rush out during those talks. So if you have a blue raffle ticket, come to the second floor and in front of the DJ booth at 6:30. That's where the grand prize drawing will be. So with that, let's get on with it, so to speak. We are going to talk about navigation model for Windows XAML apps here today. Now, navigation models, it's something that if you just see it, you go like, oh, navigation, is it this about maps and how to go from point A to point B? No. This has got nothing to do with geo-positioning. This is about how to navigate within an app and between apps. So this is basically what happens when you go to a new page. The user presses the back button. The user uses the task switcher to go between apps, shutting them down, closing them, restarting them, that kind of points. So this is about system navigation, so to speak. And something I want you to take with you from here, if there's one thing, and that is, if you follow the navigation guidelines, you follow the model we have set up, users will feel at home in your application. And that is something that we think is key on the Windows platform, that users know what to expect when they go inside your application and between applications. And if you get this wrong, I'm not sure you get a second chance with the users. They will go, oh, this doesn't behave as I would expect it to behave, so they will just go pick another app that actually behaves the way it should. So really, try to get this right in your applications, and I think you have a good start, regardless where you come from other than that. Now, I'm saying Windows XAML applications here, so I just want to do a quick poll. Raise your hand if you come from the Windows Phone and prior to this and have worked with Silverlight applications. Okay, a couple of you in there at least. So I will touch on that as well, but this is Windows XAML. So how many of you have actually raised your hand if you have worked with Windows XAML on the desktop before? Okay, there's a lot of you. Huh? Yes, so basically the store applications for tablets and for PCs. So I touched on this. What is the navigation model? It's basically whenever a user inside your application going from one page to another, pressing the back button, pressing the software back button on the PC applications, how the user moves so without using the word navigate, we'll use that a lot. So how the user moves within an application or between applications. And like I said, the navigation model, cornerstone of the user experience. Get it right. Key, get it right. So with this release, we had a couple of goals for the navigation model, like on top-level goals. We wanted to enable an intuitive user interaction with the system, regardless of form factor. So we wanted the user to feel at home if they come from a desktop environment, so a big PC, mouse, keyboard, they move over to a tablet, they move over to a phone. the applications should feel the same way. And we also wanted it to have a kick to it, so to speak. So we're getting fast app resume in there. That's default now. We also wanted to unify the developer experience between Windows, desktops, tablets, and phone, which basically means we have tried to converge all the APIs there is in this area so that you as a developer do not have to switch mindset and switch knowledge base and APIs when you target these different form factors. While at the same time, of course, each device form factor is different. You use a tablet in one way. You use the phone in a slightly different way. It's one-handed versus two hands versus portrait and landscape. So we wanted to make sure that the devices could be customized and could be given that device-specific feel as well. And one thing, of course, is the back button. And we will get back to this later on during the talk. That is, of course, different. That is only available on the phone. And we want to make sure that phone applications can really use that, leverage that, and make it work in the applications without having to kind of make the same thing inside a desktop app. So with that, I want to kind of dive in and go for the APIs here. So we have the same frame and page APIs throughout the platform for XAML applications, regardless if you're targeting the desktop or you're targeting the phone, anything in between. And the frame, it's hosted inside the current content of the window. And within the frame, the page is hosted. So same, regardless of where you come from, it's same where if you're familiar with Windows, perhaps this is kind of familiar as well. Now, when you want to do an actual navigation, you access the frame.navigate API. And the parameters for this API is the page type you're going to navigate to. It's the parameters you want to pass into that page. And it's the animation style that you want your page or you want happen to your page whenever the user comes into your application or comes into that page or dismisses that page. Now, both the navigation and the parameters are optional. You don't have to provide those. And if you don't provide an animation, the standard turnstile animation that I think you have seen in pretty much all our first-party app, at least, and most third-party apps use that one as well, is what you will get. So the parameter there also, it has to be serializable. It cannot be just any parameter. And we will touch on why in a later stage, or later in the presentation. You also have access to the back stack and the forward stack. And this is, you can both inspect them. You can inspect and see what do I have in my back stack, what other pages have my user been looking at before they got to this page. And the same with the forward stack, where did they come from, if you want to save the forward stack page journal. But you don't only have the ability to inspect them, you can actually change what's there. You can delete and you can insert pages into both these stacks, if that is something you want to do. So this is the bare minimum code for displaying something onto the screen. So, okay, not bare minimum. Of course, you could do without all the ifs and and the checks here. But if this is the bare minimum to get that page on the screen. So basically, you get the hold of the frame. If it's not there, you create one. You attach it back into the Windows, the current content. on the frame you create a navigation, and that's my area, the actual navigation there. So you create a navigation to a hub page in this particular example, and that is something you will see a lot of or have seen a lot of as well, I guess. This is the universal projects, the templates, and universal is something we're trying to. It's a key here, right? It's something we're very proud of, that we have the same application running on both phone and on Windows, and yeah, you saw it. They even ran with Xamarin on iPads. That's kind of cool, right? So it takes the hub page. That's where it's gonna end up navigating to, and the arguments. I didn't put in any animation type there. And then you activate the window. Now, for those of you who come from the Windows Phone, Silverlight 8.0, that didn't quite look like Silverlight, right? And the major difference here is that you don't navigate to URIs anymore. It's page types, regardless of where. Thanks. Sweet. So regardless of where your structure of your program, you can still structure your program in levels nested down and have pages in different sub locations, but you navigate to a page type, and that is the major difference here. Now, I told you this is not going to be a Silverlight talk, but while we're on the topic, I just want to touch on it, on the navigation model for Silverlight phone, Silverlight 8.1 phone apps. Same page and frame navigation model as 8.0, no difference there. We have, however, done fast app resume enabled by default. So if the user navigates away from your application and then taps the main tile or the instance or the entry in the page list, so application list, they will resume that instance that they navigated away from. It will not get replaced. There's also, if you navigate back on the topmost page of your application, if the user presses the back button when they're on the first page, your application will be closed. Now you can opt in to being suspended in this case, but you have to opt into it for the Silverlight 8.1 applications. And if you are interested more in the Windows Phone Silverlight apps, I recommend you to go to Sam Jaraban's talk just after this one. It's in 2008, I think. But yeah, it's 5.17 if you want to check that out. So with that, that's Silverlight. Put that to side and back to XAML. There is, from scratch default, pages are not cached in Windows XAML apps. So every time the user navigates to a page type, it will be recreated. That instance will be recreated every time, unless you set it to cached. And there is one caveat to how that can be done. And the enabled mode for cache mode needs to be set in the page constructor. So you cannot decide later on that, oh, hey, I wanted to cache this page because the user clicked the button or whatever it was. It has to be done in the constructor. Sorry, it's a limitation, but I wanted to point it out to you. With that said, of course, you would want your application to be as fast as possible, as responsive as possible, and you start caching everything. But on phone, be careful. Sooner or later, you might have gone to Andrew Klinick's talks yesterday, where he said that we have done improvements in order to not swap out your applications and kill them off, and allow more flexibility to how much memory your your application consumes. But still, there are limitations, so be careful when you do cache your pages, especially if you have big pages like content, big fancy 1080p images as backgrounds and on buttons and all that stuff. Think it through and set the cache size to something that you think is valid for your application. So something that the user, if they usually navigate 4 pages deep before they leave your application, and then, or they can navigate back for 4 levels, keep it to 4. Don't put it to 10 because you have 10 pages, right? So really think it through. There is one way to get around the, yeah, so. So, so the caching, it's a global caching. So it's going to be cached for both back and forward stack. So there is, so the page cache is a singleton. So this might not at first look make sense to have a singleton pattern for cache, but this is why. Yeah, so if you navigate 10,000 times to the same page, you still only have one entry in the, it only takes up one instance in memory. So, yeah. Now you can set it to required, and this, yeah, okay. I was just thinking, so try to keep the questions afterwards, if possible. But yeah. So I will make sure that we have time for it, and I will be around later as well. But you can set it to required, and this one will not count towards that page cache size. So basically, if you have a page that is really costly to recreate, you set it to required to make sure that it will stay cached even if your user navigates to a lot of different pages and your page cache size is set to something smaller than the number of pages the user will go to. And we also recommend, and this is something you will see in the templates for Visual Studio 2013, is that your topmost page is set to cache mode required, so that the user always has a snap in the, it's a snappy feel to the application when they return back onto that top page, because honestly, that is the page that will mostly navigate to most times inside your application lifecycle, most probably. When the user navigates away from your application, unfortunately, it happens, right? They use other applications than yours. Now, you need to you need to save the navigation journal in order for the user to, once they return, come back to a situation in the application where they left off. And this is something you, as a developer, need to take care of. We don't do it in the framework for you. So you have to call the get navigation state, and you will get an opaque string with the entire navigation journal in it. And this is why the parameters had to be serializable, because they're part of this string. So you call this, you call the get navigation state, you get this string, you store it away, and when you resume after termination, so after your app has been suspended and terminated due to memory pressure, you read up this string that you have saved to your local storage, and you call set navigation state. With this string, boom, you have the exact same navigation journal as you had when you left off. So the user will, when this happened, they press back button, they will return to the page they had before in their, they had navigated to before that particular page, before they left off. I've been talking about everything here so far has been this is the same. It's the same APIs for desktop, tablet, and phone. Well, there is this one thing that is the big difference between the form factors, and the PC and tablets do not have a hardware back button. So they have a software back button in order to navigate inside the application. And this should be present there, and it's inside the application. So you present a software back button that the user can press to go back in the navigation history. Again, that is something you have to add. If you use our templates, so the Hub app application that in the universal template has all this code in there. It's part of the navigation helper class. So you can, if you start from scratch, you can pull just that class and use it in order to get all this functionality. Now, since it's a software back button and Windows do not have a application stack history the same way as on a phone. On top of when you're on the topmost page, this back button will be hidden. It will not be seen. There is no navigate back to the previous application on tablets and on desktops. So there is no concept of I came from this application into this one. So there's no returning. Now the user can of course swipe on the left swipe and flip between all the different applications they have in the system. And when they do that, the current app will be suspended in the background as soon as it's not in the foreground. Yeah. So on the phone, the hardware button is there. All apps have a hardware button. Even, and this kind of can sound a bit strange, but even phones without hardware buttons have a hardware back button. So phones that come out with no buttons on them, they're coming, basically have a what we call software steering wheel. And in that steering wheel, there is the home button, the search button, and the back button. And they will behave the exact same way as an actual physical button on the phone will do. And that is that they're exposing a back-pressed event that the application needs to handle. So whenever the back button is pressed, this event is fired, and the application needs to take care of the logic of how to react when that message comes. And this is something you need to do on page levels. So again, it's part of the navigation helper. If you use if you start from that sample. If not, you need to add it into your pages manually or through your own classes. So it should, when pressed, firstly, if you have on your page any transient UI, it should firstly dismiss that one, and then pressing it again, it should navigate away from your page. Now, if it's not handled, so if you don't handle this event, the system will navigate away from your application. And that is what we want to do. That is what the user wants to happen when they're on the top of the page. So when on top of the page, the user wants to navigate away, so don't handle it. But if you don't handle it, the user navigates in 10 pages, they press back, and they all of a sudden is back on the start menu. And that is not a good user experience. So this is why you need to handle it on every page. And this is basically the code to do it. So it's really simple. There is you add a listener to the back-pressed events, a handler. And inside that handler, you check whether you can actually go back on the frame. That is the last if statement there. If frame can go back, that is the API to use to see, am I on the top level of the application or am I on a sub-page? And if on the sub-page, you call the go back, which basically will navigate back in your backstack. And you set the event to handle. Now, of course, if you need to dismiss transient UI, you need to do something like pop up a UI perhaps because of the user have edited something without saving, or you need to handle it in here as well. And it's all good and nice saying, oh, this is how it should look, this is how it feels, but let's see how it actually behaves. Oh. I'll log in here. And hopefully there is code on screen. I have a very, very simple application just to kind of show this off. And as you see, it's the universal application. So we could run this on anything. I will actually show it on the phone. And I will show it on the emulator here. So while that is starting up, it should be fairly quick, I hope. Yeah, there we go. So basically every simple application has a button. When you press the button, you go somewhere. And in this case, we go to the second page. Now the user is here, they do something, and then they press the back button. And this is how it should behave. And we will jump into the code here, put a breakpoint here, yeah. So this is, we get into the handler, we basically get a hold of the frame. Our frame is not null, that's good, because we have content there. Check if the frame can go back, yep. We can go back, so we just call the go back function, set the event to handled, and we're back on the first page. So that is the user experience they would assume should happen when they press this. And if they press back again, we're thrown into the back button handler. And this one I actually have on the main page. We get a hold of the frame. We check if we can go back. We can't. So the system navigates back to wherever it was we came from. So this is basically the look and feel of it. Now, if you were to not have that second page back button, basically we don't register a handler. The user comes in again, they start their application, they navigate to this second page, and yeah, there's zombies ahead, so let's get out of there. Whoops, yeah, you see, that is not a good user experience. So make sure that you handle the back button on pages, going to the previous page, and on top of the application, navigate away from the application. And we're back, yeah. So I mentioned we made fast app resume the default behavior for applications in XAML apps for this release. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that and how that behavior might change how you handle the different resume scenarios in an application. So basically what will happen is that if a user relaunches the application, it will reuse the suspended app instance. So there is no replace. There is no way the system do not take care of pressing the start tile and the app will be refreshed. So and the reason we don't do this is that we want the user to quickly be able to resume into the application they had, into the experience they were having. Now, on Windows Phone 7 and 8, replace was the resume policy, or the policy, which meant that every time the user went back out to the start menu and pressed that start tile, it took a while to get back into that application. And that is not good. And we saw from user experience studies that most people were actually doing this. They're navigating back to start and pressing the icon again, your tile again, in order to get back to the application. They do not use the task switcher. That's a power user, so to speak, command and way of getting between apps. So most users will relaunch the application and expect it to come up where they left off. So, I touched on this. When launching from the primary tile, be sure that the user returns to where they were. And this is, of course, it goes without saying with a fast app resume. That's why we have it, right? So make sure that the user feel that they get back to a state where they left off. They get the same, if they were editing something inside your application, they get back to that edit. You save state, you save all the controls data that is needed for the user to return where they left off, especially if the user will get mad at you if they lose data they're working on. So because with today's setup, toast will come in, there will be things happening, they will navigate away from your application, they will do something else, and when they return, they expect it to be where they left off. Now, if the user haven't been there for a while, so they left your application for some reason, and they have been doing a lot of other stuff, they might not want to get back to that state. They might assume that they should get a new, fresh one because they haven't used that app for, I don't know, an hour, a day, a week, depending on your use case here and your application. So make an educated guess as to whether the user want to get back there or not, or if they want to have a fresh start. And if in doubt, provide the user with a choice. It's like, yeah, you left off here doing this 2 days ago. Do you want to continue? And then act on it. So that gives the user a way to get back to where they were, but it also gives the user a possibility to start fresh, right? So this is basically the flow chart of that happening. So the user presses your launch tile, they go somewhere inside the app, they start doing things, toast comes in, they navigate away, they check your message, whatever it is, they return later, they go to start screen, they press that app tile. A couple of minutes have passed. Yeah, probably they want to get back to where they were. Just resume. Continue where the user left off. Hours have passed. Perhaps not so likely that they want to continue with whatever they were doing. So clear the backstack. Make sure that they get a fresh feeling and start the application as if it was a new instance. So when suspended, the navigation journal we talked about, save that, save state, and the optional timestamp. Make sure you have this, because otherwise it might be that the user might never be able to return to that fresh instance of your application unless they go into the task switcher, manually close it, or restart the phone. So with that said, previous execution state is something you want to look at when you resume to make sure that if the user have actually terminated your application for some reason, you should not resume them to where they take off. They took an active choice of closing your application. That means that they will most likely want to start from scratch, right? So that is closed by user. Now, not running, that is basically your application have not been started since this instance of the OS start. So basically the phone has been restarted, you have not been launched since that time 0. Suspended, yeah, you haven't actually been terminated. You are still fresh in memory. So just resume, continue where you were, and you should be fine, right? And terminated, yeah, that's when you, from memory pressure, have actually been, your instance has been removed from memory, your state, everything should be saved on disk, and you should restore everything, including the navigation journal, so that the user can resume from where they were. There are a couple of strange scenarios here. So first off, if you come from the phone side, this is slightly different. The world is not what it used to be. So your application, when being put in the background, is not immediately suspended. It will continue running for a few seconds. So if the user switches quickly between your applications using the task switcher, so this is only if you don't actually forward navigate away from your application or navigate back using the back button. So if they use the task switcher or home button, you are still running. So the user might return to your instance before you have got a suspend, and you will not get a resume if you haven't got the suspend. So there are situations where the user might actually switch back and forth in your application, and you have no idea of this. Unless you listen for activated events, which is, if you come from the Windows side, that is something you probably have seen already, that you can listen for activated. And in Windows, that is especially true if you have the split view. So if you launch a secondary application and secondary application takes up the other part of your screen, there is no navigation happening here. So you will not get an on navigated from, and you will not get an on navigated to when you switch between them. And this is what is happening in phone now as well, even though we don't have split screen, but the application is still running for a few seconds. So you need to, basically the on-navigated from doesn't happen until the get navigation state is actually called. And if you're trying to debug this, you're trying to debug your suspend handler in Visual Studio, you need to actually send the suspend command from the debug menu. Because otherwise you will continue running forever. So the suspend will not happen, right? Because we are attached to that process. And the same then, again, when you navigate back to the application, and this is if there isn't an actual navigation, so there's no app navigation happening. So if you press start, there's your start tile, there is an actual app navigation happening, so you will get an on navigated to. But if you use the task switcher, there is no actual navigation happening there in this case. So the on navigated to will not happen unless you call the set navigation state. When that happens, the navigation will actually happen as well. So if you do this with the activated and suspend handler, if you call that function, you will get an on navigated to. Now most people don't have to really care about this. So if you have an application that is only your own content, you're I don't know, displaying some data on a page, and you're not using any specific resources within the system to do this, like exclusive resources, you don't have to care. But the exclusive resources, that's where this gets, you need to take this scenario into account, like the camera. So if you're navigating away using the task switcher to a different camera app, you will have two apps trying to get hold of that view screen, that viewfinder, since both are actually running. So you need to release your exclusive resources on this activated or deactivated event, and then reacquire them again once you actually get an activated event again. So that's kind of the main entry point to fast application resume and the main entry point to your application. Now, most applications today have multiple entry points, basically deep links. And with deep links, we mean, yeah, any other entry point, a toast into your into a message inside or a specific page inside your application, a pin from a start screen to a secondary page. Someone clicks something in Action Center that launches your application with a specific page, deep links. On phone, coming from such a deep link, the user would expect when they press back button, they go back to where they were. So the experience will be that someone presses a secondary tile, they go to your deep link screen, presses the back button, they return to that deep link, that start screen with the deep link, right? Same goes for a link in an email into your deep link. When the user press back, they go back to that email application. You see where I'm going with this, right? You have a link in a message, you go to that link, user comes back to the message. Search results, yeah, same thing. Action Center, yeah, you press that action, you go into the deep link, but no, it's not actually returned to the Action Center because the Action Center is not actually an application running as its own instance, it's a system overlay. So the system overlay will be dismissed when you navigate away from it. So the user will return to wherever they were before they pulled down the Action Center. That's kind of why that one is slightly special. And with toasts, of course, you go back to wherever it was that toast was when you clicked it. So there are a couple of different ways to handle this in a good way. And I will go through a couple of those scenarios and kind of talk through what happens and what you should think about and how you should behave with your code in those situations. So if the app was first launched from the primary tile and the user navigated into some page down there, they might have edited something, they might have done something. For some reason, they navigated away, perhaps through, I don't know, notification and then back to start screen, and then they want to do something else, so they launch a secondary tile. What happens normally, if you don't think about this, is basically you continue on that frame, you add a new navigation to a new page. Well, that will break the back button behavior that we just talked about, right? Because what will happen in this case is that you will start navigating through whatever it was the user was doing before they launched the secondary tile. So yeah, clear the backstack. Make sure that if you're launched with a different launch arguments than what you had in the first instance, make sure that the user don't end up somewhere where they don't expect to be when they press that back button. There is, of course, different ways to handle this. You can create new frames. So if you were first launched from that primary tile, the secondary tile, you create a new frame. That is another way of doing it, and that is what I would say. If you have a lot of different secondary tiles, or if you think that the user will launch this differently often, going back and forth between these two situations, definitely keep two different frames here. The other way around, so the user actually got a deep link first, and then they go and press that secondary deep link. Yep, reuse that XAML frame. It's probably something that you don't want to do is create a secondary or a new XAML frame for every secondary entry point. Think of it as if you have a messaging system, for instance. So every time you press that toast into your message would constitute a new deep link, which means that you will create frames of the frames of the frames of the frames of the frames. Of course, they will be garbage collected, they will be swapped out, all that stuff sooner or later, but it kind of gives you a bad memory profile, right? So, but remember this, If you reuse the frame, clear the backstack. So again, otherwise, break the behavior of the back button, and we don't want that. That is, we don't want to break the back button. You came in from the secondary tile the first time. The user, say it had a toast the first time. They actually launched your application. A message came in, they pressed that message, and then later on they click on the actual application and want to go into that application. Now, what will happen if you don't do anything, if you don't check that launch parameters, is that they will be stranded on that page. It's like, yeah, you have a page there, you have already been started with some arguments and shown that page. You resume to that page, and the user will never get to that home page. So what you want to do that? Get a way for the user to get home, so to speak, to the top level. Add some UI elements if you don't want to handle all the intricacies of the different launch parameters and the different ways of getting to different places in your application. And be sure to remove that previous page, the backstack again, if they press home. Because if they press home, they probably don't want to go back to where they came from when they press that back button. So when they go into home using an in-app navigation, clear the backstack. The other way is, of course, to do the same thing as the other way around, right? I talked about if you launch from a main tile first and then from a secondary, create a new frame. Yeah, this is basically just the same thing coming from the other side. So different XAML frames for different entries, or at least from primary entry and secondary entries, right? Wrapping up. In summary, resume your app if the user have done any work that losing would be frustrating. So if the user have some way of editing something inside your application, they navigate away. When they return, they want to continue that email. They want to continue that tweet. They want to continue editing that video, whatever it might be. Make sure that the user get that. If the user haven't been there for quite some time, make sure they get a good feel, a good restart of that application. And if that period of time is uncertain, if you don't know what you want to do, give the user an option, right? Also, this about deep links. Make sure that you don't strand them there. That is, if you tried to do fast application resume in Windows Phone 8, this is what you saw. User got stranded in places where they couldn't go back. This is no longer the case. So there is a way to do this and handle this. So make sure that they're not stranded there. And there's, again, I'm saying it again because I want it to get in there. The back button takes the user back where they came from, right? Always back where they came from. Never to some place they have no idea why they got there, right? And for you as a developer, the navigation model is pretty much the same between Windows and phone. So if you're doing your application for one form factor, it's pretty much the same when you go to a different form factor. The only thing is the back button, I would say. So handling that in a good way. And that is the hardware back button event is only available on phone. So that piece of code, if you're sharing, if you're using the universal project, you have to make sure that that piece of code either is stuck only inside the phone project or proper if-defs. And again, the fast app resume. We really want that. We really want you to use the fast app resume in a good way, because that gives the user a really good experience on any device. Even the low-end devices will have a snappy feel to it if this is done right. There are some other talks out there that I think would be of interest if you're doing Windows XAML applications. Right after this talk, there is a talk by Amy from design research on basically strategies to get your application right. Tomorrow, I talked about the animation you can do for your different for your pages. That is new in the XAML framework for phone. Canal is having a talk on that one. Yesterday, in case you missed them, there were a couple of talks about the XAML UI framework and controls. I would recommend you see them if you're new to the Windows XAML UI control. And of course, feedback. We have a bit of a contest going on in the team. So please give me feedback. I want to beat my boss at least, especially since this is my first time presenting at Bill. So with that, questions I open up. So see if I can answer them. Thank you. Thanks.
So question about back navigation and backstack in general. So you said by default the cache is disabled. So that means that, let's say I'm vertical scrolling on Windows Phone, I navigate to another page, I click back, the vertical scroll position will be lost by default. Is that accurate?
Yes.
So text box text, vertical scroll position. I now have to start tombstoning every single detail in my app whenever I navigate at all.
Unless you set the cache mode to enable.
Right, which you said we shouldn't do because of memory constraints. So.
I don't know, I said you should take a long, hard thought about what is the right caching model for your application. So I don't say don't cache, because yeah, things get snappy if you cache them. So make sure that you have a good caching strategy for your application.
Right. So I have a more methodology question about this. Why make the Windows Phone navigation model worse as opposed to making the Windows navigation model better? It kind of seems like we brought down the level to Windows as opposed to bringing Windows up to Windows Phone.
Yeah. So that decision, why we went with the Windows navigation model on phone rather than trying to get the Windows Phone navigation up to desktop, I don't know the reason behind it. It was a decision taken before I joined. So unfortunately, I can't answer why we chose that. But in terms of making sure that it's the same, at least on both, so we will see if something will happen with going forward, or we will see what happens. So.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah, sure.
Yep. In Windows Phone 8, some control, like the sys or the command bar, it was mandatory to have a phone application frame as a root control. Is it mandatory here to have a frame as the root control? Or usually I use a custom control to have a kind of shell, and then inside I have a frame. Is it okay?
So let's see. I'm actually not 100% sure. Let me see who can answer that one for you. I don't see any one of my neither engineers or colleagues in the same area sitting in this room, which is kind of, I'm gonna be a little bit pissed at them. But I will make sure we get the contact infos, and I will send you information about that. So I'm not sure, unfortunately. Yeah.
What do you recommend especially with circular linking, what would you do to save the state for each page as it's being navigated to? does the navigation system right now, does it hold the state? Like when you navigate back, let's say you do navigate back with arguments,
Yep.
does the backstack hold all the arguments for each page as navigated to it?
Yes. Yes. The arguments is part of the navigation journal, as long as and this is again why the arguments need to be serializable. Okay. So yeah, they're part of the navigation journal.
So how would you handle if the state of the page changes while you're on it, and navigate away from it after it's been changed? Then you'd have to manage your own state?
Yes. Yes, you would have to handle the state of that page, and we have in the templates for the project. If you go check at the hub template, there is a suspension manager as well that will show you how to save state for all your pages on different frames as well. So if you have multiple frames, multiple pages, different navigation parameters, it will show you how that is done.
Okay. One last question.
Sure.
You mentioned phones without hardware buttons. You said they're coming soon. When would that be?
I don't know, but it's there. The support is there in the system for no hardware buttons. So they're steering wheel. So did they say in the keynote? So was it 9? Okay. So Elop was showing one of them. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So 6:30 probably. It's the one without buttons. Yeah.
So you had a slide about activation and deactivation for like web camera resources.
Yeah.
But what are the events for them on a
So
page?
the event you want to listen. So the event you want to listen to is the window activated, and the window activated is deactivated. That's the event the application will get to show that it has been sent to the background.
But that's in the app.cs, right?
Yes.
So
there is no page navigation.
no, exactly.
Yeah.
Because I've been developing both for Windows Phone and for Windows 8, and Windows is a pain because you have to like boilerplate your pages and then inject your own code to detect it.
Yes.
So I can see it from a technical perspective, but from every other perspective, the Windows Phone way is the way to go.
Yeah.
Just like you said.
I agree. I think that the way the Windows Phone has done it is a good way to do it. In terms of the convergence here, this is the path that was chosen. So hopefully, I'm not sure they're up yet, but there should be samples showing the different ways of handling this in a good way, both for exclusive resources and for every other application. So.
I just hope we can take the feedback back with you.
Yes,
because
it's good to hear. I hear you loud and clear. That the phone navigation model as it was is kind of the way you see you want to go with the way.
I've had access to the 8.1 SDK for
Yep.
quite a while, and the number one complaint in the mailing list was the navigation. No one likes it. If you come from a Windows Phone perspective, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, it's different. Yeah, definitely. I hear you. And
I like difference.
I
if
will.
it's
Yeah.
an
Yes.
improvement.
I hear you.
Yes. But
I'm trying to be as diplomatic as possible. I say I hear you, and I will try to see what I can make happen as we go forward. So, like I said, I joined after the decisions were taken, so I'm pretty new to Microsoft. So, thanks.
You mentioned there are samples available for these. Would it also include how to handle deep link pages?
Yes.
Deep link suspend resume?
Yes.
Okay.
So we're putting together samples for basically every type of scenario, or every scenario that I have mentioned here. We have worked on samples to get out. So as soon as everything is available, there should be on the MSDN sample pages.
Other question is probably also related to the app lifecycle. So Windows Phone had this concept of tombstoning. How does it fit in with the new navigation model?
So that is basically what happens when I said terminated. I don't say tombstoning. There are some words that we don't use anymore.
Well, terminated could also mean that the user terminated, right? Not and resume on termination is that the page stack is not maintained, but resume on tombstone is a page stack is maintained.
Yes. So when I said that the application is being suspended and then terminated, that is what you call tombstoning. If the user terminates the application in using the task switcher, that is the previous execution state was terminated. Was closed by user, not terminated. So terminated is the tombstone, the previous what was called tombstone, and closed by user is the closed by user. Yeah.
So resume on termination would still have the page backstack maintained kind of thing, and we need to resume from there. Is there an opt-out policy on this? Could I opt out of, I don't want to resume from the backstack pages, I want a fresh start kind of thing?
You can of course do that. If the right way for your application is to always bring the user back to the top page, you're free to do that. You don't have to handle all these different resume scenarios. You can just go back to the top page and that's it.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Hi there. In your example, you showed handling the back button on every page.
Yep.
Is that the recommendation? Could you not do it at an app level? Can you not do it at a base page level? Do you have a specific reason for doing it on both pages?
The reason I chose this is basically to give it a good example of showing how it behaves differently on the two pages. But no, there is basically no big reason for it. We have it on page level through the navigation helper, because we think that you want to handle when the navigation happens on different pages, it's on the page level that things have changed or happened that will make you put up a UI for showing that, hey, you had something unsaved here. So it's that specific page that you want to handle it differently. Of course, you can handle this in the app CS as well on the frame. But then you will have to reference down into the pages to get the state of why and how you should behave.
Okay. You said that fast app resume was now the default. Do you mean it's actually the only option? Or do you mean it's a default and there are other options? It's
default and it's the way it
the
does.
only option that
Yes.
You can't choose something else other than the default.
There is no replace policy, no.
In terms of deep linking, you didn't mention the music and video hub in the phone in Silverlight. That was tricky. Is that still available? How does that work?
Sorry.
So deep linking from the music and video hub. So if you're in there, can you still do that?
Where is the guys I would want
No one knows.
to answer that? I don't know, but I think so.
Okay, you didn't talk about navigation implications of choosers or file pickers or sharing. Is that because they're covered in other sessions? Are they really simple, or do they not really apply? Do they not have a navigation impact?
So pickers and choosers should be covered by Arun, right? Yeah, Arun is covering that. His talk has already been. Let me check which session that was, and I'll make sure that either the presentations on Channel 9 will contain that information, or I will get it to you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, sure.
Hey, I have a question here, and let me explain with the scenario actually.
Yep.
I'm on dashboard homepage. I made some, as soon as I reached the home screen, I made a network call. As a result of it, I filled some list view.
Yep.
And from there, I moved to the page 2. From there, I moved to the page 3.
Yep.
And on the page 3, I have a button. If I click that, I have to go back to this home screen.
Yep.
Okay, so if I use frame.navigate with type of home page, then it actually creates a new instance. But I wanted to retain the previous state as it was like, I made a network call, fill the list view. So how can I achieve that actually?
By saving state on that page, navigating, and when you navigate back to it, you
fill the list view again?
no either if you just cache everything, if the page is cached, you navigate away, you navigate back to it, the same instance will be resumed, unless you do something specific. Like I said, it's singletons in the page cache. So then you don't have to do any magic, so to speak. It will be cached there. Otherwise, save state and restore the information back into your.
Maybe we have 40 to 50 forms, and on each form, whenever we reach each form, we wanted to preserve the state of each form. We really don't want to create a new page at all.
I would think I would have to actually try some code to see how that should behave, and which would be the correct way of doing it. Let's exchange contact details, and I will.
With pleasure.
I will find a way for you to do that.
Yep.
Okay.
That really helps us.
Okay. Good. Well, that's it. So thank you.